Hello, welcome back, everybody. Hello, good afternoon. No, it's good morning, actually. Good morning. We're still in the morning. Yeah. Okay. Hello, welcome back, everybody, to session 2 of this morning. I found session 1 fascinating. A tour of the Celtic bit of the UK, but lots of references to PHE and what it was up to, and Leeds Beckett and so on. Loads of learning from that. But we're going to take a bit wider. We're going to venture overseas, not just to Northern Ireland, we've been there, but we're back, but to Amsterdam first, because there's lots to learn about interventions elsewhere. And we've heard a lot in our own professional lives about what's going on in Amsterdam. I know Lorraine and some of her team were over there visiting, and it's very intriguing. And we're delighted to have Dr. Lieke van Houten over from Amsterdam to talk to us. She'll be followed by Gavin Breslin about international learning. Now, Gavin's actually working with the East of Scotland people, but he's got an academic attachment with the Ulster University. And it's absolutely vital that we build on what we know already, because there's no point going and inventing the wheel once again. So I think this session will be absolutely fascinating. It'll be followed by a panel discussion from the speakers of sessions 1 and sessions 2, and that will take us to lunch. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Lieke, who has been for almost 5 years with Health Services Amsterdam as an expert in systems science as well as behavioural change. So her job is to use the scientific knowledge to improve the programme, but also to incorporate the experience of professionals as well as citizens. Lieke's background is medical anthropology and sociology. Anthropologists are great people to have in any research programme, I must say. Her PhD thesis is on the topic of self-management, support and needs of people with chronic disease, which of course is very relevant to what we're about to hear. So looking forward very much to what you have to say, Lieke. Welcome. I should also say we've had a word about the temperature here. It's not always as cold in Scotland, but flick a few switches and there's a lot of people in the room and we all might warm it up, but we might not. So let's see what happens.
Well, thank you all for having me here. I'm really delighted to be here. Yes, today I want to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing in Amsterdam, why we started this initiative, what we have encountered, the difficulties that we have encountered, and what we have learned during the way. As you already said, I'm Lieke van Houten, and I'm working as a senior researcher at the Public Health Services in Amsterdam. It all started in 2012. 1 out of 5 children in Amsterdam was overweight or even obese. And this wasn't done equally in the whole of Amsterdam, because you could see that in some parts, this is the percentage of 10-year-olds, and in some parts of Amsterdam it was 1 out of 3 that was already overweight or having obesity, while other parts it was 1 out of 10. So there were really significant differences between the parts in Amsterdam. And of course, it were those more deprived areas with people with low income, with migration background, low educational level. That were the areas where the percentage of overweight was the highest. So we decided that we had to do something, and that what we were going to do had to be different in the different areas. So we really wanted to go for equity and not equality. So not the same thing for everyone, but really fitted to what they need in those different areas. So our mission of the Amsterdam Healthy Weight approach was that we wanted all Amsterdam youth on a healthy weight in 2033. Why 2033? Because that was 21 years. And we would say it takes a generation to change. So we had a really long-term vision, and that helped, because something as big as this, you can change in a few years. You really need to take the time to do that. So we aimed at 2033, and we said it is a collective responsibility. It's not the individual that is responsible for his own weight. It is a collective responsibility. So it's not also only the responsibility of the health services, but it is also responsibility of all the entrepreneurs working in Amsterdam. It's also the responsibility of the people working at the economic department or with the housing. It's the responsibility of all of us. And what we also really wanted is that the healthy choice is a normal choice. So you don't have to think about it. It's just normal to have water in school. Or it's just normal to eat a healthy breakfast. It's normal to go with your bike to school. And I would even add, it shouldn't only be the normal choice, but I think it should also be the easy choice. Because now it's most of the time really difficult to make that healthy choice, so we should make it easy. And for that, we shouldn't only stimulate the healthy behavior, but we also need to have a healthy environment. Because only then, when we have the healthy environment, we can show the healthy behavior. So this was our mission and vision and strategy. And actually, it was quite simple. We said there are 3 rules of thumb. You need to eat and drink healthy, have a good night's sleep, and be active. Quite simple. But the reality was, of course, so much more complex. It's not as simple as from A to B. It's all intertwined, it's all connected with each other. And it's so easy to say, yeah, you have to eat healthy, while people are having difficulties paying bills. It's also a bit arrogant, I have to say, so that I'm here with my high education, with my background, saying you need to eat healthy. So it's really difficult, and we really need to look at it a different way and not only blame the people who are living with this every day. So we went from levels of prevention to chasing rainbows. We really thought like we have to change not only the individual in the middle, but we also have to do the other layers. We have to focus on the living and working conditions, and also on the general social, economic, cultural, and environmental factors. So what we used to do was really focus only on the middle, and now we said we have to focus on all those levels. And I think the BBC visited us in around 2018, and they did a really nice item about it. So I'll show that. Then you could have a bit of an idea how it works. I don't know. Yeah.
Meet Tyrell, typical 9-year-old, doing well at school, but struggling with his weight. Tyrell is caught up in the childhood obesity crisis, which has swept the entire developed world. With 1 in 5 of its children overweight, Amsterdam has decided to act to help kids like Tyrell.
You want to feel fit and your condition has to be okay, so I tried to make him aware already, like just think about your health.
A key task here is to identify the children who need help. The Amsterdam initiative means every child is weighed and also tested for strength, endurance and balance.
The beauty of all of this is that the kids are just having good fun. They don't really realise that this is a serious data gathering operation, and any found falling behind will be given extra help.
For Tyrell, that means regular home visits from volunteers advising on healthy eating. And there's the gym. 3 sessions twice a week with other children on the programme. They're having fun, getting fit, and crucially, they're losing weight.
He's having fun, but he knows this is important work as well.
He does know this is important because he sees it, he sees that he's overweight. So he knows something has to be done. Hopefully this will help him.
The Amsterdam mission is to educate kids and their parents to the benefits of exercise and the dangers of unhealthy food. And this is targeted help.
Is it a healthy option?
It's a
A little bit.
Yeah.
It looks delicious.
Yeah, very delicious.
There's a special push to reach mums in low-income parts of town with large immigrant populations. In some minority communities, almost 30% of kids are overweight, much higher than the national average. So this city is bringing mothers together to share ways to improve their children's diets.
In my shopping list, I have only healthy things. When I come home, they say, Mama, it's only green. Everything is green.
The children of Amsterdam are on the move, on the ice, burning calories. It's free entry here and in other city sports facilities. And it's working. Obesity rates are down.
There's nothing more important than the future of our children, not only all political parties, but also sports organizations, schools, shop owners. Everyone is helping, and that creates an environment in which we can change.
All schools in this programme ban junk food, and break time means eating only fruit, drinking only water. Most parents are now enthusiastic supporters, but of course, there have been challenges.
There's been some protest. Yeah, some people think that we should not be sitting in their parenting chair and telling them how to raise their children. And well, our argument is we're not. We're just telling you what is allowed and what isn't allowed in school.
Elements of what they're doing here in Amsterdam have been tried elsewhere, including, of course, in the UK, but with limited success. What seems to be different here is that there's this consistent consensus, a joined-up approach, meaning that these kids are getting the same message from City Hall through their classrooms and into the family kitchen.
For the sake of its children, Amsterdam has set aside party politics, has taken on corporate business, and made their health a priority to build a better, leaner future. Jeremy Cook, BBC News, Amsterdam.
Yeah, so this was 2018, and yeah, everybody saw it as a success, and it really is a success. But there's also another story behind that success. It was really difficult, and it still is, because once you are that success, how do you maintain it? How do you keep people being involved and being wanting to do this all the time? Because when you're starting something new, everybody has that energy, but keeping that up, that's really difficult. And people don't see that. They don't see all the failures that we had. So I want to take you a little bit along with and tell you more about the things that we encountered that didn't go that well. So maybe that would help you also when you are encountering those things. And one of the models that really helped us understand better what went wrong or what was more difficult was the action scale model. In this model, you see first the events, so this the things that you are doing. And this are, for example, the healthy breakfast with moms in a neighborhood. Or we have water taps all around the city so that you can fill your water bottle everywhere. That are things that are events. Then you have structures, that is how the system is organized. So the healthy schools is a type of system. We have the goals, this is what we want to achieve. So for instance, we had the goal that we didn't want any unhealthy advertisement aimed at children in our metro stations. And then you have the beliefs, and this is deeply held beliefs. And you see the differences in the sizes, and that's the impact that it has on a complex adaptive system. So the beliefs have the most impact. But what we usually do is the most on events. And I'm not saying that's not right, but sometimes you're organizing an event and you think, oh, this is really good, but what am I going to change in the system? And then you really have to go to the beliefs to really change that belief. And the belief that is, well, undermining everything that we do is the fact that people still believe it's an individual responsibility. And that belief is so deep, and it's so difficult to really get that out of the way. And I have a really good example for this, because as I mentioned, we had the goal that we didn't want any advertisement aimed at children from with unhealthy food. And then we had this advertisement. I don't know if you have this, Kinder Bueno, but in Dutch the word child is literally kind. But there is no child in this picture, so it's not aimed at children. This is not aimed at children. And the problem is that the people working at the economic department, they have a different goal. They want to have as much money for the city of Amsterdam, so they go for the one that is bidding the highest number. So they don't think it's their responsibility to the health of children is not their responsibility. They don't have that belief. So we did change the goals. Maybe we did something with the structure, but we didn't change their beliefs. And with that, we really had to go to the city council to discuss this. So they had to say, like the mayor had to say, well, this is unhealthy advertisement aimed at children. So you really have to think also about how to change and how to get all the parties willing to change the system. In 2008, there was a study being done by the university, and they said that these 7 elements were the reason why our program was working. So it was leadership, which is of course very important, and it was with us. When we started, we had someone who was really charismatic, and he was a conservative politician, but he believed in this. So he could really bring all those parties together, and that was really helpful for us. Long-term vision, so important. The communication and marketing, and I would add lobby, because if we want to change things, we also really have to be good in lobbying. And also because a lot of the people, like everyone who's here is a believer. Everybody who is here believes that we need to change the system, but we don't have to convince you. We have to convince the non-believers, and that's so much more difficult. So good communication and marketing is essential. You have to have a programmatic approach, a learning approach. You need to have an integral cooperation, and then the intervention development and implementation. So this is what we found in 2018. After all these years, I found myself that there are some other elements that are really important as well. So I will take you along those. First of all, you have to make it personal, because people really have to believe it. And for us, it was the children that helped, because our program is focused on the children. So we wanted to have a program that focused also on the adults, but we didn't get the conservative parties to agree upon that, so we focused on the children. But with that, we would also do things that change the world for the adults. But we really have to make it personal so that people really believe in this whole idea. You need to be flexible and change with where the energy is, but you have to get people involved, so you're not alone. You really need, like, you know, those birds, like they're going like this, and no one knows where they're going, but they're going with all of them. You need to get everybody involved, and also that includes the citizens. That's so important. So you really need to hear them and see what they need. And for instance, after COVID, now the focus is more on mental health, because we see our teens getting depressed and being at home. So now we're not much more focusing on the mental health, but you need to do the same things for the mental health. You need to exercise, you need to sleep well, and you need to eat healthy, also for your mental well-being. So it's not a problem that the focus isn't that much on the weight, but more on the mental health, because we're accomplishing the same goals in the end. So be flexible and move with where the energy is. It really needs to be interdisciplinary, because otherwise you don't see the whole picture and you don't see what is all happening. So you need to have everybody involved. It needs to be, health in all policies. And also this again includes the citizens. then the learning approach, learning by doing, but also just checking what are we doing, is this the right thing? And this is actually the thing that we struggle the most with, because with the whole system approach, how do you show what the impact is? Because you don't know if it's this what you're doing or is it that you are doing, and what is causing what. So I know that in the beginning we focused on the BMI, and we said, well, the BMI went down, Amsterdam is a success, it's really great. But still, I can't really say that it's because what we were doing. I'm not sure about that. So we're getting more cautious about that, and we're not focusing on the BMI anymore, because it's also, if we say we need to get that down and it doesn't work, it doesn't say that this program isn't a success. So focusing on the BMI is making sure that it is a failure, because it's a narrow vision. Also because it's a really difficult way of measuring. Children can lose weight but still be obese, but they did lose a lot of weight, and you don't see that in the figures. So we really came to the conclusion that we shouldn't solely focus on that. We have to focus on the mechanisms and think about that. And if we make sure that there is no advertisement for unhealthy foods, then probably children will be less likely to buy it. I can't prove it, but it makes sense. So we focus more on those goals and see, and then in the end we hope that we will change something. And then think big, but start small. With the whole system approach, sometimes you get overwhelmed, because it's so much that you need to do, and there's so many things intertwined and working together. Where do you start? But just start, and start small, and then just take those steps, and then in the end you get then hopefully you get to that point that you've set. But think big, so set that goal and take your time for it, because it will not change in 2 years. But just start doing it, and then I think, well, if I see what everybody is doing, we will change the world, hopefully. So thank you for your attention. I have 5 minutes, so if there's anyone who has a question. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation. Really interesting. Hi, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Really great to see the results. I'm Lauren Curtis-White. I'm a researcher based at the University of Edinburgh working on commercial determinants of health. And I was just wondering what the pushback was from industry on this work, and how you navigated that with your study, if there was any pushback.
Well, I think the pushback, no, we were too small to really push back, if I'm being completely honest. It's just Amsterdam. And now we're lobbying on national level to get things done, like the sugar tax, but it's so difficult. And I don't even think it's only the industry, it's just the political parties that don't really want to commit. So if I'm completely honest, I think they didn't do that much because it was just Amsterdam. Yeah.
We'll have more questions later on, but just a couple of immediate ones now.
Just wanted to say thank you. I thought that was fantastic. I'd like you to come to Dundee and help. But I was really pleased that you talked about beliefs and just how you went about helping people change your beliefs, because certainly in Scotland we've got a very long belief that we don't deserve to have the good food that's for export, and we just eat what's left. So there's a sort of discomfort with thinking that you deserve to eat good food, and I'm just wondering how you challenged those deep beliefs about what people thought they were entitled to eat or should eat.
But it's really amazing that you know it, because now you know that you might need to do something completely different. Maybe you don't have to do a campaign about healthy food, but about that Scots are worth it. So you can do something that seems completely not related to food, but just making sure that they know that they deserve to have good things in life.
Yeah, just come to Dundee.
Yeah.
I'll take one more and then we'll move on, okay? As I say, there's a bit more time for questions later.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dan Jenkins, NHS Highland. Really pleased that you took the approach of focusing away from BMI in terms of what the actual outcomes are, and that sounded like it was a really positive thing to do for the people involved in the structural and system side of it. I'm just wondering if there's any feedback from kind of families and participants about having the focus not on BMI and removing some of that stigmatising approach, which we know it can do, that kind of buy-in, that sense of self-worth that you can get from doing something that actually feels good rather than feels guilty?
Yeah, I think we still need to work on that, because in the health services, they still weight the children. So we're still working on that part, I think. So we did it as a program, but not in all layers yet. So we're still also learning with that, I think. But you're absolutely right. It's so not encouraging to focus on that. But I do have to say that with the name of our program, it's the Amsterdam Healthy Weight Program, but we didn't use that in the city. So I think, I have to translate it now from Dutch, but staying healthy or something. So the weight part wasn't in our name in the program in the city. Yeah. Well, thank you all. And if you have any questions, you will find me here.
What did I say? Anthropologists, top people. And this thing about beliefs and also the theme of listening, I picked that up very strongly, listening and adapting and so on. Anyway, thank you very much. I was asked to say that the slides, and there's some great slides here, the slides will be available following the meeting. And also, if the questions exceed the amount of time that we've got, we're going to have some chats on the emails and so on. We can mediate that through Obesity Action Scotland with Lika and other speakers during the day. The event is being recorded as well, so for all sorts of reasons, you don't need to take copious notes. The slides, as I say, and the recording will be available. Now, psychologists are also top people, because our next speaker is one. Professor Gavin Breslin is from Ulster University. He's a psychologist, a chartered psychologist. He leads the whole systems approach to diet and healthy weight research evaluation in East Scotland as part of FIRST. Now, there's all sorts of acronyms coming up today, and I looked up FIRST because it keeps coming up a lot. It stands for Public Health Intervention Responsive Studies Teams, and it's supported by NIHR, which is the National Institute for Health and Care Research, which is headed up by the CMO in England. But and you know what the CMO is, so I won't give you that. But so anyway, that's what FIRST and NIHR is, because that's going to come up a bit in this and subsequent talks. Anyway, Gavin Breslin recently conducted a review and intervention study on whole system approaches, as well as a review funded by the Institute of Public Health in Ireland. He's published extensively on exercise psychology, including 3 books. He's designed interventions using psychological behaviour change theory to enhance health and well-being for children and adults in all sorts of settings: schools, sports clubs, prisons, secure hospitals and workplace settings. So it's very, very important to gather together what is known about a subject before we set off, and it's really, really valuable to hear from Gavin Breslin about what he's got to say, particularly as he's got links, as I said before, with the East of Scotland project. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here in these glorious surroundings as well. So when I arrived, I had a look around, and then I was asked to go into the library. I was like, wow, really old books, and a wee bit geeky, so I really, really had a good look around, and a poke as well. I don't think I was allowed to touch anything. I sort of just described there, I'm a psychologist. I'm very interested. I'm actually a sport and exercise psychologist. And I've done a PhD in around that a number of years back, but I also worked in public health as well, when the Health Promotion Agency was in Northern Ireland at the time, that then converted into the Public Health Agency. And I've developed a number of different types of interventions, whether that's physical activity for kids. We've got one of the biggest physical activity kids programs in Ireland, north and south. And we use psychological theory to try and bring about change, whether that's looking at attitudes, whether that's looking at beliefs, whether that's trying to get kids to sort of feel good about the activities themselves, or just trying to build a level of competence in order to bring about that change. And a lot of the work that I do as a psychologist is very individual based. And you can see now how the past few years is making me step back a bit and go, right, we need to start looking at systems. Now within psychology as well, we've got what we call social psychology. And social psychology is the interactions with other people and how that can influence decisions we make. Positive decisions and negative decisions in around health, or even in around how we socialise and stuff as well. So to me, when I got involved with the whole systems approaches, I started out as an academic thinking, right, we need to start looking at the evidence. So we conducted 2 reviews, one of which was funded by the Institute of Public Health in Ireland, North and South, and also the other that was funded by NIHR, which is part of a programme of work at FIRST, and it's FIRST Connect that we're doing in Mid Lothian and West Lothian. And just to let you know how COVID has affected us, because there's a lot of people I've met at this session this morning that only contact I've had with them has been via the screen and Zoom and Teams. So it's great to see certain people. Some people look taller or smaller than I thought. Okay, so I'm going to go through a number of things, but I want you to keep in mind something. I guess the factor that's really influencing me through this is there's a psychological shift in how we work, whether that's as an academic or in my older time as working in public health. And I think we have to embrace that psychological shift of how we worked together. And it is quite a challenge because human beings don't like challenge. Or we don't like change, sorry. We like challenge, we don't like change. So I'm going to describe two pieces of work, one of which is, I guess, the evidence synthesis for the Institute of Public Health, and then work stream 1 really from the NIHR funded programme, which is the review of reviews. And I'm very, very keen that we keep going with this, and you heard it a few times already, the exchange of knowledge, learning networks, learning approaches, constantly going through, looking at the evidence, building the evidence base for what we do. When the Institute of Public Health contacted me, they wanted to do a number of things. The first one was to set out the strategic context of obesity prevention in Northern Ireland, to present evidence from existing reviews relating to effectiveness of whole systems approaches in obesity prevention. And at that point, I was really familiar with one particular review, and that was the Bagnall article. I don't know if anybody's read that. Hopefully you have. If not, I'm going to summarise it for you anyway. And they also wanted to know not just about the existing reviews, but what case studies. And it's actually really great to hear the previous presentation, because that's come up in our work and we've been citing it as well. So to get first-hand descriptions to that has been great. And then, of course, to try in this document to propose some considerations or recommendations for the Public Health Agency. And you would have heard Gerard talking about essentially some of that work earlier underpinning some of the early adopter site work. So it's great to see the evidence is being used in that way. Okay, so for the first piece of work, we had to do it in a very short period of time. So they're developing the new obesity strategy for Northern Ireland. And I don't know if you're familiar, but a systematic review usually takes about a year to do. A rapid review is about 6 months. We had about 4 months to do this. So you can see then a rapid synthesis of evidence was required. And we had to do it within a time frame because of the policy context. And we explored the whole systems approach when we wanted to know what seems to work in it, what are the key elements of it, and then try and summarise those as well. We also used the Miners Framework, which is a tool that you can use to look at methodological quality. And we came up with 5 particular studies. Now I'm going to go through those in a bit of detail with you. The first one, as I've mentioned already, is the Bagnall article. And the really nice piece about this review is that they used a guide. So they used the Garside key features of a whole systems approach. That's identification of a system and its boundaries, very important pieces for it. Capacity building, creativity and innovation, establishing relationships, engagement, strong methods of communication across systems. These things, if you are in an early adopter site, are quite familiar with. And I can go on, things from developing leadership throughout the system, robust and sustainable, and then of course monitoring and evaluation input at the end. But just going back to the Bagnall article, just to give you some of the key points. Some are in the slides, but I'm going to just go do a wee bit of a deep dive into that. So of the studies selected, so there's 65 studies in the review, 33 were in obesity. 13 included all 10 features in the Garside, features of a whole systems, or according to NICE, also produced along with Garside. Of those studies, 5 reported health or well-being outcomes, for example, consumption of sugary drinks or changes in BMI. And I know that's not a term or maybe an outcome that everybody wants to look at all the time. Or sometimes Z BMI as well, which is adjusted for gender and children as well. And also changes to physical activity. 2 reported outcomes that were associated with social determinants of health, that's socioeconomic factors, while 11 reported mainly process outcomes. And I think that's quite interesting in terms of where we are in terms of whole systems, in terms of building the evidence base. A lot of the work is around process evaluations. We need a bit of time to see how these approaches are bringing about change. From the review, it was apparent that all 10 features of the whole systems approach, or GARSIZE, were not required to bring about a change. And I want to sort of pinpoint a couple of, not them all, but a couple of the case studies that came out in their review as well. And that was the Central California Regional Obesity Prevention Program. It met all 10 features. BMI, parental awareness and community capacity building was improved. And also in the Rump and Stump program in Australia, we've seen some similar changes as well. The Rump and Stump program included 9 out of the 10 whole systems approach features. And there's another one as well, Be Active, Eat Well in Australia. It had 7 of the features. Healthy Live in Cambridge Kids in the USA also showed some positive effects, again, improvements in BMI or obesity. I guess the authors, in terms of their conclusions, and I guess that's where we have to weigh it up in terms of the quality of the evidence. Although initial findings are promising, a cautionary approach is advised. Many studies' descriptions of what constitute a whole systems approach, and in terms of the report, lack longitudinal follow-up. So again, the evaluation piece to this is so important as we go through. Furthermore, consistency in definitions. The application and evaluations of whole systems approach and how it was done in terms of consistency was lacking. When I review that, I sort of think, well, every system is different, every local authority is different, so can we really expect that? So I might sort of disagree in terms of some of those features. Moving on to the Baker review, so it's the second one. They conducted a review to determine the effects of community-wide multi-strategic interventions upon community levels of physical activity. Hopefully this doesn't turn into a lecture, folks. I had to do it at the university. So a total of 25 studies were included, with 22 of the interventions reporting that they had partnerships with local governments and non-government organisations. 11 studies were described by the authors as being provided to deprived or disadvantaged or low socioeconomic communities. 15 studies were identified as having a high risk of bias. So again, looking at the quality of evidence. And then the authors themselves concluded there's inconsistency in findings and serious methodological issues with some of the studies. And in a sense, what they're suggesting, they recommended the need for well-designed intervention-type studies to try and bring about change. And that sort of goes against sort of the whole systems approach of stepping back, taking time, build the system, getting to the events, using the scales model or whatever model we do. But they're making the suggestion that maybe look at interventions. The Bleach systematic review of community-based childhood obesity prevention studies. This is quite an interesting one because there's a change in policy associated with these interventions. So the systematic review included community-based childhood obesity prevention studies in high-income countries where the interventions were delivered with this policy change. And there's some encouraging findings shown for the changes in BMI and BMI-Z scores at 1 year up, according to these authors. A total of 9 studies were included. 5 were randomised control trials and 4 non-randomised control trials. So for those familiar with randomised control trials, what we consider to be the gold standard in terms of interventions versus controls. It's not the only type of research, you know, and some people see it as a gold standard, but we also know about the process evaluation, about qualitative talking to people, the wealth of information in that, and as a psychologist I know that very, very, very well. So it's a combination of at least, or 3 were conducted in community and schools, and 1 study was conducted only in the community, and they found changes in these BMI Z scores as well. 2 studies report significant improvements in physical activity and vegetable intake. There was 2 other reviews, and the 2 other reviews, one of which was done by Safe Food. So there's 14 studies included. This is actually a very easy read in terms of the report, and it would definitely suggest having a look at it. And some of the key suggestions from this in terms of whole systems, approaches, or what makes them work: strong leadership, relationship building, community involvement, capacity building, consistent language across the system, allocating time, adequate financial resources, population surveillance data if it's available. I know in Northern Ireland it's not available. Flexible approaches to systems in terms of their learning, and inclusion of robust evaluation. Also within that document there's some recommendations in and around Northern Ireland and Ireland as well. The 5th review, and this is quite different type of review, so this is from a systems science perspective, and before this talk I got talking to someone who's very interested in systems science and the soft types of techniques and around that as well. I'm very interested in this as part of one of our interventions in East of Scotland as well. So 21 studies were included, and essentially, just to draw that very quickly, or summarise that very quickly, there's a need for multidisciplinary work: psychosocial scientists, clinical scientists, public health researchers, and researchers with systems science knowledge to try and build on those. That's the 5 reviews we've come across from that piece of work, and again, it was a quick evidence synthesis. In terms of the case studies that stand out, these are the ones that we've tended to pick up on from our review. So the Shape Up Somerville in Massachusetts, USA, the Rump and Chump intervention Victoria in Australia, the Be Active, Eat Well intervention in Australia, and of course the Amsterdam programme as well. There's also one in Goulburn, London and England as well. And just to give you a wee bit of a flavour for the Shape Up in Somerville of what it includes, so for practitioners in terms, or for those maybe setting up a system or about to embark on a system. I know there's certain people embarking on systems or starting the new whole systems approach in council areas as well. So the Shape Up Somerville was a 3-year childhood obesity prevention community level programme. It was delivered in multiple settings and coordinated, mutually reinforcing way. So again, similar to our previous talk about using the same sort of language and trying to get the same message across. It used a community-based participatory research approach, so elements of co-production in that, and increased physical activity and healthy eating in early elementary school children before, during and after school. The intervention was designed to encourage work in partnership and coordination across the school environment, and then reinforced by home and community type activities or behaviour change. Examples included the Somerville School Food Service Department enhancing the quality and quantity of healthy foods, teachers being trained to implement a new classroom-based healthy curriculum called the Health, Eating and Active Time, the HEAT Club. After-school programmes where children and adults were trained in cooking and nutrition. Newsletters were sent out about, I guess, healthy ways to cook, and also coupons as well for purchasing food. Restaurants across the city were encouraged to enhance food options for people and families who eat out. So the restaurants were then considered Shape Up approved. So again, adjusting menus, getting them on board to have an influence, maybe offer more fruits and vegetables, small portion sizes, or smaller dishes. A walking committee was established. School nurses were trained to collect height and weight for the kids and be on call to maybe counsel families or provide some support there if someone was overweight or obese. And the city school department created new policies in nutrition as well. So again, you can see that from a policy perspective, there were some suggestions. I was going to go into the Amsterdam healthy weight approach in detail, but I don't think I need to do that. But to say that the principles are the 7 features that were described in your very clear slide on that. There's another piece that was in your research articles that I thought was really, really important. So having those 7 features, and I know you said there's more than that, but the conclusion of the authors, so here we go. So the authors suggested that making progress only works if attention is paid to all 7 of these elements. And that's fine. But it's this bit here that maybe really sort of look at it in more detail. And cherry picking because of a lack of a budget, or short time frames, or lack of expertise doesn't work. And not only that, but since the publication of some of that work, the framework, the logic framework has now been published, which is a great resource that we can have a look at and build on as well. So the evidence is growing, and it is good to see. Also in our report for the Institute for Public Health, we contacted everybody across the UK to say what is happening. I know more is happening. This was published in January 2023. So essentially, you can see the different areas, and I know the Republic of Ireland as well, that there is some movement towards whole systems approaches as well, and there's lessons to be learned from here that could be used there as well. I guess detailed evaluations. So again, I'm interested in evaluations. So there's the national evaluation that I won't dare go into, but I used to have a slide on that, but I'm not going to do that in Scotland. But this one here, the NIHR Public Health Intervention Responsive Studies Team programme that I've been involved in for close to 2 years now. And essentially what we're doing there, or what we've done, is we have followed in 2 areas of east of Scotland. We've followed the steering groups and how they've set up the programme, how they've brought their workshops together, and we've also had to their liking or not, I'm not too sure, we had a survey we called an ecologically momentary analysis. So we had, I guess, focus groups at the beginning, and at the end I've joined their groups as well. But we had this survey that went out, and we monitored every month of what activities and stuff were being used in that. That evaluation is close to completion, and I need sign-off from NIHR, otherwise I would have shared some of that with you today. And I know I've shared some of those details and brief reports with those in that area. There's also the healthy weight taste side of whole systems approach to childhood obesity, and I think we're waiting for the outcomes of that as well. Just very quickly, in terms of the work streams for the NIHR in East Scotland. So we have 4 work streams. What does that mean? First one is, again, build the evidence. We're doing a review of reviews. That is now complete, and it's available in preprint if you want to see it. It's in the second round of reviews with the editors at the journal. And essentially, it was great fun. We had 20,308 titles and abstracts to review. And we got that down to 110 articles, full article reviews, and then we ended up with 8 review articles. And what we've come across is about 10 models of how the systems can be mapped. There's few randomized control trials, which is no surprise. They're mainly process evaluations. And again, some of the case studies that came out in our Institute of Public Health synthesis review have come out here. That's no surprise. It's the same information, albeit we looked at more databases. One of the things that came out very strongly in the review was nothing about us without us, so public involvement and the engagement of the public in the setting up, maybe even the steering groups as well, and then when you go to the next stage then of bringing them further on board, and maybe translating some of this information to the public as well. And a programme that did stick out for me that we talk quite a lot about is the COMPACT study. So Childhood Obesity Modelling for Prevention and Community Transformation. And the reason why that stuck out is because it had epidemiological data linked with process evaluation and outcome evaluation as well. In terms of conclusions and recommendations, I guess we need clarity in definitions and terminology. We are getting better at it. The science is building with us. Nothing about us without us, so user involvement. Invest in the development of indicators for measuring change. Conduct feasibility studies, continually evolve in that. Look back at it, reflect, and keep it flexible as well. Maintain oversight on insights from evaluation. The UK early adopter sites, we're doing that. Careful consideration will be needed to select the optimal model or approach. There's the Leeds-Beckett model, there's a model we heard in Amsterdam, and there's the other models that are listed in our reviews as well. And I guess looking to see how we can transfer some of this learning to other areas of the system, but also keeping in mind that purse strings are tight as we could here. And so how do we get efficiencies in what we do as well? And just to conclude, just to say, acknowledge the research teams involved in a lot of this work, both at NAHR and the FIRST team, but also the Institute of Public Health, Queen's University, Hertfordshire University, Birmingham City University, and a few others as well. Thank you for your time.
You head that way.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much, Gavin, for that. That was absolutely fascinating. And I suppose it's the centrepiece of the day around which things are going to leap off the page because there's learning from all of the practical application of this. Anyway, can I ask the 4 other colleagues on the panel to join us up here? That's Lika, Gerard, Sophia, and also Cole Baird, who's going to join us. He's a colleague of John Nicholson's, and he's the unit head for the Diet and Healthy Weight unit in the Population Health Directorate of Scottish Government. So a warm welcome to you. And you've got a whole hinterland of knowledge around this area. Questions, comments, but particularly questions in the time we have. Can I start with one? And Gerard and Lika alluded to it. This is pretty tough going in some respects. And there's things that you would recommend that we do, but there's also things that you recommend that, given the light of experience, you would cross the road to avoid. So don't go there. So please say one thing that you would avoid doing that you've learned from your experience around this area. The don'ts as well as the do's. Gerard.
Probably it's a kind of shift in thinking.
Sorry, can you tell me? That's it.
It's a bit of a shift in thinking from what we would have done before. Before it was very focused on kind of outcomes and objectives, where this is looking at a process. So it's a totally different approach and a different way of working. From the offset, in the whole engagement of engaging with councils, looking at developing the model and so on, it wasn't based on outcomes and objectives. It was based on the theory and the process and the learning from other places. Those kind of objectives and KPIs will come later once we have the action plans in place. So it's kind of flipping things around in a different way. And for us, it was definitely a bit of a challenge. First of all, to kind of shift our mindsets, but it was actually in that discussion with Obesity Scotland that we were able to then shift our thinking and our approach to kind of looking at it in a different lens. And then we were able to then kind of share and influence that with our kind of wider stakeholders as well. It's just a different way of working. It's just a new approach, but we need a new approach because what we know from the data in Northern Ireland, if we continue doing things in the way that we were doing them, that the statistics are going to continue going in the wrong direction. So we have to shift the way that we work going forward.
Okay, any other don'ts as well as do's?
Yeah, I think don't assume that people think the way you do.
Yeah.
So really understand where they're coming from, what they need to be doing. Like people who were working at the economic department, they have different targets than I have. So I have to accept that and understand that and see how we can meet in the middle.
Okay. Yes.
I would say, don't be afraid to talk about it. It's a strange thing to say, but I think there's sometimes a fear, especially colleagues that aren't familiar with whole systems approaches. When they first hear about it, it feels overwhelming. And then they're trying to make connections with how their work will fit in. And for those colleagues, you know, we have to look out for them as well, that might feel overwhelmed already. And then you sort of, this is a new thing, you know, and what it is, it involves everything. And I think just trying to, I think there's a phrase was used by the chair of the last panel, was to sort of slow things down a bit and sort of provide time for clear thinking and planning and maybe building up the foundations first before going straight into changing the world, really.
Good.
Can I just
Cool.
build on what Gavin's saying? Because coming to it pretty fresh, I thought, well, you know what? This is just partnership working, collaboration in another name. I know how to do that. And then realise, well, it's not. It's a system. You end up making the relationships that you already have, because that's the space you're already in, and not lifting your head and saying, well, actually, yes, obviously, when you get to the stage of implementation, clearly you need to look in partnership, but it is something different. And I think recognising it's different is probably the first stage towards, you know, that change in mindset.
It's this systems learning and relationships, very important issue. Lastly?
So that's what I was going to add. It's a disadvantage being at the end, I think. So I would say the do is the relationships, it's that communication, and it's building up that trust. And the don't is interventions. The familiarity of partnership working is often about doing interventions to others, and this isn't about doing interventions to anybody. This is about often us as organisations working better together. So try not to use the intervention word and support others not to think about in terms of interventions, because actually, as we saw, it's about structures and beliefs.
Very good. Yes, two questions in the middle. Could,
Hi, thanks. You all mentioned, I think, in your presentations, health inequalities and the link between obesity and deprivation. I work in health inequalities in Dundee, and I just wondered what your views were about food choice and cost, particularly now with food costs increasing drastically, and how you kind of square that circle between making sure that kids and families that are disadvantaged get enough to eat and encouraging them to lose weight and be of a healthier weight.
yeah, lurking behind it is the cost and the crisis. How do we mix that, put that into the mix? Any answers?
That's a massive challenge. You know, I don't know if the answers to that. It's so hard to when you listen. I'm just thinking about focus groups and going into different groups and listening across different systems. And sometimes, even as health promoters or practitioners or researchers who are on probably decent salaries, it's harder to get into the minds of the person who is trying to make ends meet and bring about that change. And I think we need to get so much better at that. As part of FIRST, what we have is our public involvement research group. So it is a group of 11 individuals who, before we give any information out, they go through it. They also, even how we ask questions and stuff, we just have to be a lot more sensitive to that and understanding of it. I don't think we're there yet, to be honest.
I think part of the challenge is also that actually we have to address that first, because it's not fair that those are the communities that can only access food that is killing them slowly, and we really need to address that. And I think that's where the participation and working with the communities come in. And so for our work in Wales, that's why we end up picking off or targeting bits of the system to begin with. So in Cardiff, the piece of work that they're focusing is advertising. So we're trying to change the fact that when kids are walking to school, they see 15, 20 billboards all advertising a fast food joint. And so that's making them want that food. And actually, if we can change some of the things like that, and they've done that quite successfully in London with London Transport, had to work quite hard with all the commercial companies on that, but they've seen that they haven't actually lost money, but they've changed the style of advertising they use. And for me, I feel we have a duty that we have to address it, because the UK has children who are stunted in growth now compared with our colleagues and our families overseas. You know, this is a generation who are at risk of dying before their parents have died, you know, the age of their parents. We can do nothing else but tackle it, I would say.
Yeah, engage with the underlying issues. I think that's one of the things that are inevitable here. The next questioner. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Ruth Campbell, I'm co-lead of the North Ayrshire Early Adopter site. My question's actually for Lydia, but maybe Sophia can help. In one of your slides, when you were talking about spatial planning, one of the examples that you gave was looking at planning applications through the lens of public health. I was interested, Lydia, what change were you able to affect there? What was it you were looking for, and what were you able to do there?
Yes, so we were looking at, so as a health board, we were consulted on for very large scale planning applications, and we as a public health team wanted to comment on applications that were smaller in size, that we wanted to comment on all of those that had a food application element, so hot food takeaways, cafes, restaurants, and we've created a series of templates whereby we can draw out those public health areas of importance within those applications. So for instance, we responded to one which was for a coffee shop drive-through, but it was in an area which had which was within walking distance of educational settings, so schools, colleges. It already had a high proliferation of existing establishments that sold food and drinks high in fat, salt and sugar, and also in an area with great health challenges. So we wanted to, put those as reasons as why we didn't think that was a suitable location for that application. And so we're starting to respond to more and more applications in response to that. It could also be around, is there an active travel route? Is there cycle storage? So all those wider elements around responding to and influencing from that planning perspective. So one, within applications that are put in front of us now, but two, working with planning departments around their local development plans so that we can change policy, or we can have wording put within policy to enable those changes to have already happened before it gets to planning stage. So, we're early in the days of our journey, and each time we do it, we have more and more information to feed into our template. School development applications are another one. So, if it's a new build school, looking to extend or expand, can we be sure that there is enough dining space for children to have their lunch? Is there enough, if it's an expansion to a school, is that expanding into the green space or the playground, which will reduce the opportunities for children to be active? If they're expanding the numbers of pupils, will there be enough cycle storage for staff and pupils? Can they actively travel to school? So it's really bringing all of those elements in. But if you want to know more, I'm more than happy to share the templates that we've been using and developed. And it's something that we did in my previous role in Cheshire West and Chester. And really, in the end, we ended up with a health impact statement that all applications fill in as part of their pre-validation. So there are different elements that you can build in, really.
Thanks very much indeed. Now, I picked that up as well. Ruth, it sounds as if you're in with the bricks in local authorities if you've got their weekly planning sheets and can comment on them and can feel free to comment on them.
The weekly planning lists are in the public domain, so you just need to
go
to the website.
There you go. Well, having the courage to pipe up and say, nah, it's quite another thing. Other questions, comments? We've got a few minutes left. Oh, yes, sorry. There's a microphone.
Thanks. So just to follow on, I'm sorry, it's embarrassing in front of Lika to have to remind everybody that the UK now depends on food banks and food pantries to meet people's basic needs for nutrition. So I'm sorry about that, Lika.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, I can't
Sophia,
see
I just wanted to follow on from what your comment, the very powerful comment you made. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. You know, at the moment we've got a model where, with the best will in the world, we've got volunteers and communities scraping the food off the back end of supermarkets and then trying to sell it at a discount to people. And none of that food is subject to any of the sort of nutritional guidelines which we would subject school food to or any other public food. And yet we're supporting this with public money, and it's reaching people who are most in need of good food. I'm just wondering whether you've made any progress in Wales on trying to extend nutritional guidelines to these off-market food initiatives that are going on.
So no in terms of the guidelines. However, I think there are a couple of other things that in Wales we are beginning to think about to come round to that bit of the system. So one of the things that the Welsh Government is beginning to implement, starting with primary schools, is free school meals in all schools. Starting with the primary schools, starting in September. There are huge challenges with that. We have a lot of primary schools that no longer have kitchens. So we've heard about the planning system at a local level. We're dealing with that at a national level because we need to be addressing that. A lot of our school stock are quite old, so they're building these new schools in. There isn't necessarily enough space for all the children to sit down to eat. They're not necessarily allowed to eat outside. You know, there are a huge number of issues we're having to tackle just to get that policy in place. Lots of opposition. But the plan is that eventually it'll be a free school meal throughout the school life of a child. It's going to take time though to get there, and a lot of the system is going to have to change to address that. So that will be one way that we will then be assured that children will be getting a reasonable, healthy meal. So alongside that, we're currently reviewing the guidelines for school meals, and we're doing a lot of work. We're doing some pilots, they're just about to get started, looking at the purchases of children and looking at the nutrition guidelines, updating those, working with our catering colleagues, working with the local government association, all to improve that side of the system as well. And then we're also looking at the food supply, the sort of farm to fork element as well, looking at how we can support local growing models. There are food partnerships that are building up across each local authority that are bringing farmers and local buyers and community garden schemes together, looking at how allotment type schemes can be expanded, looking at how people can be supported to grow in a windowsill, on a balcony if they have it, you know, little corners. The Incredible Edibles programme that was started in Todmorden, we're looking at how that can be adapted in different places. So there are lots of grassroots movements, I think, that we're then trying and look at how we can tie that in and look at that food system, and procurement as well is a key part of that, I would say.
Thank you very much. Any quick points, because we're running short of time, quick points on that issue that other experience is worth reporting?
It's just to say there's similar challenges in Northern Ireland in regards to policy, in regards to food standards. Like the recent example being there was nutritional standards across schools, and those new nutritional standards have just been stood down in recent times because of cuts in education. So which meant that schools were then able to make the unhealthy choice more available because it was a cheaper choice as well. So there are challenges right across the board which are going to have that impact on health, because there's only so much within health that we can address, and there's so much outside of health that's going to have an impact on population health.
Well, with that and a slightly dampening note, I don't want to delay you from lunch any longer, but there's a huge amount of learning here, and there's some real realities which I think we've come across with the questioners in the most recent session. Realities that get in the way of good intentions that we need to factor in, and we need to listen. And so I don't want to sum up, because I think there's a lot of things said and done, but I hope you regard this as the beginning of the end of the beginning of a process of learning and listening. And it's going to continue this afternoon with reports from the WSA projects around Scotland. Look forward to hearing from them, and then wrapping up at the end But for now, can I thank very much the panel, plus yourself, for this morning's contributions, which have been endlessly fascinating and a great wealth of interest and understanding and knowledge that we can bring off the page and apply in our own situations. But anyway, enjoy lunch. We're coming back, I don't know when, but what does it say in the programme? Yeah? What does it say here? 1:30? Okay. It says there. It says there. Thank you.